Stephen Mansfield, New York Times bestselling author and speaker.
Doug Tenaple, I'm the creator of Earthworm Jim.
Tweet groups.
I'm Victor Dweck.
Joseph Carter, I'm the Mink Man.
This is Dave Baker from Forged in Fire.
This is Leanne Morgan. I'm a comedian, and this is why you should never.
Never.
Not ever.
Don't waste your time.
Oh, you really should.
Listen to those darling, yummy Reverend and the Reprobate.
Go check us out on YouTube. Like and subscribe so we can maybe get monetized in a while from now. But we gotta start now, people. There you go. You can use that.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Reverend and the Reprobate show. I am Pastor Lucas Pinkard, and with me is a
Kira
guy
Davis,
who turns 21 in prison doing life without parole.
That was not Kira Davis.
Stanley the Reprobate Gibson.
Yeah, Gibbons.
What's going on, Big Dan?
Mr. Gibbons.
What's going on, Mr. Gibbons? This is throwback to Dr. Ray's economics class.
Yep. Yeah, man. I'm excited.
How goes all the things?
Good.
Yeah? I see you're wearing the same shirt as next week.
I'm wearing the same shirt as you'll see next week. Next week, small little update.
Yeah.
We are fostering 6 puppies.
Whoa.
Yeah, they showed up today. 6 German Shepherd lab mix. Maybe, we're not sure. Some of them look a little
And you're
off.
doing this for
we'll roll a clip right now for clickbait, because 6 puppies bounding around is gonna get some clips.
There you go.
Gonna get some clicks.
So this is for the Humane Society of Tarrant County that you guys are working with, right?
Yeah,
that is pretty cool.
Yeah, Heather contacted them. We didn't talk about this on the show, but last November, I think it was November, we took in a pregnant mother. And she gave birth at the house. And then they, we had some puppies that didn't make it, but they got adopted, and so now we're on round 2.
That's awesome.
Now we don't have the mom this time. They sent us an email that said, "Hey, we've got a lot of puppies. Can you take 5?" And so we showed up today, and there were 6.
Nice.
So we have 6.
Just so you know,
German
we're
Shepherd.
not going to be visiting your house for the next few weeks because I don't want another puppy.
Oh, I was going to say, you're definitely, if Kirsten catches wind of this, it's happening.
Well, speaking of things that are cute and awesome and are just total clickbait for us, Kira Davis is on the show.
I'm being careful with that.
I'm going to be reckless with it because Kira's awesome.
She is awesome.
Yeah, she has said both in her comedy routine, which you need to check out. She's got some stand-up comedy stuff. She's the editor-at-large at RedState. She's written all kinds of blog
Just
posts.
listen
You can
to
see her
yourself.
at Just Listen to Yourself is the name of one of her podcasts. Red plus Black is a really interesting new thing that she's doing with some other African-American conservatives. They talk about the issues of the day. She says, don't be caught off guard by the fact that she looks cute, because she's got very sweet dimples and she just looks like one of those people that should be able to help you out. She's not, and she doesn't like you, and she doesn't like us. And so, if you want to hear...
She told people not to listen to us.
She did.
I took that personally. I don't appreciate that, Kira.
Well, we literally asked for it. So Kira Davis was, she's awesome. She's been a recent and consistent contributor on the Babylon Bee and is just amazing, filled with insight. We get into a lot of different topics with her about our personal culpability whenever our political parties, whenever our politicians, whenever maybe the apologists that we follow, we talk about some of the things that have surrounded the Ravi Zacharias International Ministry scandal and some of those things, how culpable we are as people whenever our politicians, our political parties, or the people that we put on a pedestal fall off and we defend them without knowing really any or all of the facts. We talk about her independent film that she made, Minty, on the life of Harriet Tubman, that's in kind of a cool blaxploitation / Quentin Tarantino style of film.
And 2 things.
Yes.
The most important. She tells us one politician that she thinks is very cute.
This is true.
And number 2, I walk into probably the biggest bear trap that I've had so far.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely and tremendously wonderful.
Bad.
So,
and I don't know. We haven't edited it yet, so I'm not 100% sure. I know that that you're hearing this, and I haven't edited it yet.
It's staying in there because I do the editing.
It probably is.
It definitely will.
But so check it out.
Editor-at-large of RedState and Hallmark movie expert Kira Davis,
who she thinks is cute.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Today, we have got a guest that I've been really excited about, not just trying to get on the podcast, but also having on the podcast. One of the few, what I refer to as the gems of journalism. Though slightly to the right, very down the middle, presents the arguments very well. She is a stand-up comic, podcast host with the Just Listen to Yourself podcast, and Ladies of the Ladder, if you were familiar with that from a few years ago. The editor at large at RedState, and an indie filmmaker who I have some serious questions for about her film Minty, which maybe is the best coverage of the story of Harriet Tubman. It is the wonderful, the fabulous, the stunning and brave Kira Davis. How are you, ma'am?
Wow. Introduction. Thank you, guys. I am so happy to be here.
Yeah, dude, that's a lot on your plate.
Oh man,
would you be opening to add more, like a franchisee owner of Jersey Mike's or something?
Just to have something extra?
I do have like 5 minutes on Fridays, which have not been taken up with anything. So I can do that. I also homeschool. I homeschool my daughter. Wow. And so there's a lot going on. Yeah. But I mean, there's always room for more, right, guys? Content.
That's exactly right. That's the Gary V strategy.
Gary V tells us.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we've got a myriad of things to cover. We want to be respectful of your time this evening. I want to jump head into the political stuff, which is not something that we typically get into on this show. But since we have an expert in the field here, what I really love to talk to you about is how you shifted from being a more liberal thinker and being part of the Democratic Party into the more conservative. I made a similar swing. So in 2008, I was actually a delegate on the state level for Hillary Clinton, and there were some things that happened in that election cycle, in the 2008 election cycle, that really disenfranchised me from a lot of the things that were happening within not just the Democratic Party, but also within the liberal movement. And I kind of went through a period where I was like, okay, well, I don't think I really align with the Democrats anymore. It's hard for me to say that I'm a conservative. Maybe I'm a libertarian. And I find myself in this place where I feel sort of politically homeless. And you've got a really interesting story about how you made that swing as well. I'd love if you'd share that with our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. As a Black woman and Canadian, I'm actually Canadian by birth. I was raised by hippies, atheist hippies, pretty socialist. Definitely leaned left, kind of a default Democrat, actually, but always very aware of political things. That's just the environment I was raised in as a kid. And what happened was I got married and I moved to the inner city. I moved to Gary, Indiana with my husband, where he is from. And I started an after school program where we mentored kids, gave them access to the internet, helped them with homework. I was an advocate for mostly grandparents. There was a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren. And so I was an advocate for them in the school system, helping them navigate public school and that kind of stuff. And I had the chance to see how all the policies that I had supported my whole life, how they actually worked up close and personal. And I realized that they didn't work. They weren't working. So it gave me pause. And then as the years went on, I just sort of realized, I don't think that I am a liberal. I didn't really understand what a conservative was, but I didn't feel like my beliefs were lining up with what people were telling me and what I was observing around me. And I was observing my community, the Black community, suffering. We were missing out on educational opportunities, missing out on family structure. There was a skew. The criminal statistics were all skewed. Like everything was just haywire. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. And my father-in-law is the first Black man I ever met who called himself a conservative and a Republican. And my husband's pretty conservative, but he's apolitical.
Yeah.
And so my father-in-law would challenge me a lot. And he would tell me, well, why don't we think through these ideas? Why don't we talk about this? And there was never any vitriol. He would just kind of challenge me. And so it was kind of a slow burn over the years. And I think what happened was when Obama came along and I didn't really like him. and people were telling me that I had to vote for him because I was Black. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know anything about him. Like, he just sort of popped up, and I don't really like his policies, and I'm into school choice and he's not. And there's some other things. And I didn't want to vote for him. And people were so angry with me. I was like, that's when I was like, I don't think I'm a Democrat. I don't think I am. So I have a love-hate relationship with the Republican Party. I live in California. So,
you guys have a love-hate relationship with government in general over in California right now.
Yeah, I'm not even a Republican here. I'm a registered Democrat because you don't really get to vote unless you're a Democrat. So I don't call myself a Democrat or a Republican, but I do call myself a conservative voter, and I'm fine with that label.
Yeah, I think of all the people we've had on, you probably line up the most with, I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Mansfield. He wrote The Faith of George W. Bush. He's a social and political commentator, also a very strong believer. And he seems to be similar to you in the way that he presents himself on his podcast. It's just to the right of center enough that there are certain moral issues that sway you in that direction. And you've been clear about that on your podcast, and you've had the last 2 episodes of your Listen to Yourself podcast, or Just Listen to Yourself podcast, have been absolutely fascinating. With your neighbor who got me convinced that that there might be extraterrestrials, and then in a more sensitive subject with the way that a lot of us approached Ravi Zacharias and the biases that we had. And I have to admit, I was a little bit guilty of that. And for those who don't know, Ravi Zacharias was a sort of famous Christian apologist, and ended up being very abusive towards several women in several different ways. That was more or less covered up. It looked like it at certain points, and now because of an independent investigation done by Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, which is now changing their name, they uncovered a lot of things that happened, and were able to verify those things as true so that those ladies could get some justice and some closure. But I was one that, when I found out, in particular, because I worked in the mission field for years, that he owned massage parlors, people were like, don't you think that's a strange thing? And having had several friends that were in India or from India, I asked one of them, and they were like, well, if you're a wealthy Indian person, owning a massage parlor or a bathhouse is not that, big a deal. It's not something that's really out of the norm culturally. And I was like, well,
and it ended up being
okay, well, maybe that's a thing. And so as I was having conversations, I was trying to bring this, like, well, we have to worry about the culture and bring those things into it. And was trying to make some apologies for that. What is it that led you in particular to look at our Zim Ministries, and how has that, that last podcast you were talking about our internal biases and the biases that we hold, how do you think that you can take that and apply it to different areas of life, especially political and religious areas?
Well, I had an inkling about Ravi, to be honest. I mean, I was shocked to hear all of the things, and he wasn't somebody I followed closely, but I love apologetics. So I've definitely heard him around and probably even quoted him from time to time, but I was absolutely shocked. There was nothing, I didn't even know that there had been previous accusations against him. He had a sexting scandal back in 2017, and he buried that woman and her husband.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't know any of that. But I do count myself as complicit as a Christian, and as somebody whose job it is to be skeptical. If I had known about those accusations, I'm not sure I would have believed them, because, some of them were coming from atheists, and okay, you have an axe to grind. It's easy to dismiss. It's easy to dismiss things that we don't want to believe. And so I was watching some of my favorite commenters and pastors and podcast hosts come out and make apology videos saying, look, we have some culpability here. We're also responsible. We ignored the evidence, and there were a lot of mea culpas out there. And I thought, gosh, isn't this an interesting lesson that we're learning here? That a lot of them said, hey, you know what? I heard the charges. I should have been skeptical, but my confirmation bias made it so easy for me to dismiss these charges against a man that I really respected and really loved. And don't we do that politically as well? I feel like if we could get to a place where we can recognize that our confirmation biases make us believe things about each other that may not be true, we can at least dial down some of this tension that we have between left and right, between conservative and liberal, whatever labels you want to put on your politics. The fact is all of us are guilty of this, right? We have the idea of what's right. We have an idea of which politicians are the quote good politicians. And we look at each other and we're so quick to judge each other about who we are. And sadly, I find Christians do this too much with each other. We'll judge each other's soul based on who we vote for, and we never consider that maybe we don't have all the information. Maybe we have denied some truths about this politician that we love or this politician that we hate because it doesn't serve our confirmation bias. It doesn't serve what we believe to be true. And I've just heard a lot of Christians, especially over the last 4 years, talking about who we should be voting for and why. And that's a large discussion, and it encompasses a lot of information and a lot of experience. And the conversation keeps getting boiled down to right or left. And it's like, you can't paint one side as evil and one side is good. What if you don't have all the information? What if, I say this all the time, I've been a dozen years in politics now, what if the politician that you think is amazing and is pure as a driven snow and never cheats on his wife and never cheats on his taxes, what if you don't have all the information about that guy? What if that person that voted for Hillary Clinton or that person that voted for Donald Trump, what if that person that you've been seeing is completely morally corrupt? What if you don't have all the information about why they voted for that person? What if it's not as black and white? We all were so quick to dismiss the Ravi scandal because he came with a reputation. He came to the table with a reputation that we wanted to be true. And then we judged the people who criticized him as having ulterior motives. What we didn't have was all the information. So let's take that lesson and posit that out to our political discourse. We don't have all the information about each other. We each choose news outlets, all of us do this, that confirm our bias, that confirm the information that we want to know. And I think that's fine, as long as you go into it knowing that you have a filtered point of view being presented to you. But what we need to do is maybe look at how our confirmation bias makes it harder for us to see the whole truth about each other. And maybe we should treat each other and the politicians that we pledge loyalty to with a healthy amount of skepticism. Maybe we do that, and maybe that takes some of the air out of these conversations.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about just being able to deal with one another with even the smallest amount of grace. Danley and I don't agree on everything, and most of the time he tries to derail any cognizant thought that I'm able to have. But it's such an important piece of what America has always been, and really what the church has always been, is if you're not able to have, as you promote, a social discourse or a civil discourse, where you're actually able to have the conversation where you don't leave as enemies, you just leave as two friends that disagree on something and have presented different issues, then we're never really able to accomplish anything, which I think has kind of got us in some of the crazy positions where we're at from a stalemate perspective.
Yeah, it's almost a revolutionary thought in today's political climate to have an open conversation. So you had mentioned not staying in, or I'm kind of paraphrasing a little bit, but getting out of the echo chamber that you're in. What would you say? Would you have a problem with me just voting for Dan Crenshaw based off of his Texas Reloaded ad campaign?
No,
because I think that's the greatest ad campaign.
I mean, you know what? A good ad campaign can make all the difference. I mean, isn't that what an ad campaign is supposed to be? It's supposed to be influential.
Yeah, he jumped out of a helicopter.
Somebody did their job there. If they got your vote because of an ad campaign. You know what? I'm not a political elitist. I'm not a snob about this stuff. People don't have, it's my job to dig in every single day, to read stories from the left and the right, and to parse out what the truth is. I make it a point to get competing information because I know how much opinion is out there disguised as news. But that's my job. The average American doesn't have time for that. The average American doesn't want to do that. Unfortunately, a lot of your media and a lot of your politicians know that. And so they depend on you not looking for information and not knowing. But of course, it's important that if an idea is good, it can be distilled down to a few minutes. It can be, if an idea is good and well thought out, there's nothing wrong with the distillation process that comes with seeing an ad on TV. That's the whole reason we have ads, to convince people. So if you saw an ad that tipped the scales for Dan Crenshaw for you, more power to you. What I don't want, what I think is important, is that if you make that vote, you don't judge the person next to you who didn't make that vote. This is the information you voted on. You might not have all the information, or you might have different information. This person has a different set of information and they've chose a different way. You can vote for whoever you want based on whatever you want, as long as you're not judging the people in front of you, particularly judging their eternal soul and the entire value of their humanity based on one vote that they cast in one election, which is nothing but a drop in the bucket of eternity.
Yes, ma'am.
You got it?
Yeah,
I feel like I understand.
Yeah, I remember when you were
A bleeding heart liberal
working for the Clintons, and I remember driving away after having a conversation, going like, "What is his deal?" And then I'd call you, go, "Hey, wait, hanging out tomorrow?"
Yeah,
like it doesn't matter.
No, and
ultimately,
one of our best friends is a guy named Greg Lewis, who has a podcast called The Secular Dissident, where he actually does that. He has civil discourse with people.
His middle name is Evil.
Yeah, Greg Evil Lewis, and whenever I was growing up, I was working with him in ministry from age like 17 to 23, and the entire time he would always just hammer me about my politics, and I thought that I knew everything, and.
Sure.
It's one of those things, is that there are certain things, especially when we're younger, that we get really passionate about and become very ingrained in us. And I think more than ever, we're seeing this in the social justice movement and with, the social justice warriors and critical race theory and intersectionality, and where all of those things are coming together, and that there's a lot of that is becoming the battleground for, as Nancy Pearcey would say, applied sciences is now being dictated how they can take hard applied sciences by the softer sciences and the social sciences, and there's become kind of a discord there.
Actually, real quick,
yeah.
Speaking of that, I saw a video of Daryl Davis. Guys familiar with? Are you familiar with Daryl Davis?
No, I'm not.
He did a TED Talk.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a lot of work where he sits down with different KKK leaders, and over the course of the years, tries to befriend them.
Oh, yes, I am familiar with this guy. I didn't know his name, but yeah.
Amazing. And I don't remember what his count is, but he's got, I want to say, over 20, maybe even more hoods that he ends up collecting the hoods as he befriends these people and changes their minds. And I saw a video of him sitting down with some BLM leaders, and they did not agree, and he was trying to speak to them to say, hey, you need to be able to have this mindset that you might be able to change their mind and that they're worthy of having a conversation. And they would not shake his hand. They were uninterested in that.
Oh, wow.
It was really kind of a shocking.
You know what it is guys, everybody wants to be heard. At the end of the day, people just want to be heard. And even the people that you think that you hate or you think hate you, everything boils down to people just wanting to be heard. And they will cling to any ideology or any cult of personality or any figurehead or politician who makes them feel like they were heard. I would dare say that was the mysterious power of Trump. Like he cultivated this cult of personality, but it was because there were so many people who felt like they hadn't been heard. And even with Black Lives Matter, in fact, one of the most popular episodes of my show, Just Listen to Yourself, is my episode on Black Lives Matter, where I break down the difference between the movement, the sentiment, and the organization. They are two very different things. But what I appeal to in my listeners, and remember, I'm a very conservative woman, but what I appeal to in my listeners is, hey, if people are mad, could it be that they have something to be mad about? It's always like asking the question, what you got to dig in though. You got to drill down. That's what you were talking about when you were talking about this guy, Daryl. What he's doing is drilling down with these guys and getting to the root of what it is they're really angry about. And at the end of the day, it's not that they're angry about Black people. They might manifest itself as that, but it's not that they're angry about Asians. It's that they're angry that they haven't been heard. They're angry that their feelings don't count. And they're angry that they think they're right and everybody else is wrong and won't anyone listen to them. So this is how we should go. It's grace. That's what it is. It's grace. I talk about it all the time, but you have to be willing to go, and I suspect Daryl probably does this too. You've got to be willing to go into every contentious conversation, laying down your right to be offended. And how hard is that? A lot of people will always want to be like, but, everybody's got a lot of buts. I'm talking, and everybody thinks I'm talking about the other person too. Conservatives don't think I'm talking about liberals. Liberals don't think I'm talking about conservatives. I'm not. I'm talking about you. You got to lay down your butts. You got to go into the conversation saying, I am going to give up my right to be offended in this situation. And I'm going to actually listen between the lines and hear what you're telling me. And I'm going to treat this conversation in good faith, which means making the choice to not to assign perverse motives to somebody right away when they're speaking, when you don't know. That's what good faith means. And what grace is making the choice to treat somebody, not to treat somebody the way you think they deserve to be treated. It's really hard to go into political conversations like that because everybody has made their politics so personal. And everyone has made their politics almost their salvation in a way. And it's really hard. If someone came to me and told me that I need to give up Jesus, I would be like, no, I wouldn't, you can't talk me out of it. That's what I consider to be my salvation. You cannot talk me out of it. Well, imagine somebody thinks that their critical race theory is their salvation, or their vote in the 2016 election was supposed to be their salvation, or this politician that they love, or this activist or this actor is their salvation. And you come in and you start daring them to give that up. Yeah, that's a hard sell. We got to have some grace for each other.
That is, it reminds me of one of the things Malcolm Gladwell talks about, and he does it in two of his books, both in Blink and in Talking to Strangers, is that our ability to read somebody else's mind is very, very low. But our confidence
Maybe
that we our confidence that we feel like we can, that I know what the other person's intentions are really high. People are like in the 90th percentile of, I feel like I always know what another person is thinking, and in like less than 15% in actually being able to assess what the other person is thinking. And this, if all of us are married, that is, if you,
I was about to say this, if you're married,
that's exactly right. I am about to wrap up year one of marriage. I thought I knew so much about the woman that I married, and I have no idea. It's the reason my dad has a running joke that he talks like at dinner with people. He's like, well, my second wife was like this, and my third wife was like this, and he's a deacon in our church.
And your mom just punches him?
Yeah, well, I had somebody pull me aside, and they were like, your dad has had multiple wives, and he's talking about them in front of your mom. How is she okay with this? And I'm like, they're all my mom. When they first got married was wife one. When she had kids was wife two. Now that she's a grandmother, it's wife number 4, and it's all the different changes and phases. And we'll use that to segue into now that we've upset everybody by talking about politics.
Your dad is a brave man. I'm terrified of your mom.
Well, my mom's she's a graceful but scary woman.
I'll tell you this before you segue. I will say this: if you're upset about the political conversation, or it makes you feel like tense. And maybe you're like a little nervous that these guys are moving into territory that you don't come to this podcast for. Come over to Just Listen to Yourself and hear me make the arguments from both sides. I never hide who I am. I always tell people what my filter is. It's important to be honest about that. But I always challenge you to see things from both sides, to make the arguments to yourself. And maybe you'll find that the people you think that you hate or who you think hate you, maybe you'll find there's a way in to, at the very least, consider them worthy of humanity.
Yeah.
Which I think we can just get to the point of we don't need to unify. We don't need to agree. We can just get to the point of tolerating the fact that other points of view, even offensive ones, exist. I think we're going to be a lot better off.
I do too, which is what leads us to our next topic, and that is you and my mother have this shared love of the HCU. And if people don't know what the HCU is, it is the Hallmark Cinematic Universe.
Oh, yes.
And so Hallmark has just announced that they will be doing more pro-LGBT movies. They announced it last week, and I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on the fact that they're moving more in that direction, because this is something that's near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, I actually have a Hallmark podcast. It's called A Very Merry Podcast, which you can find. My friend Amelia Hamilton and I do it. We're Hallmark super fans. Look, Hallmark's a business like anything else, and so they're going to do what's good for their business. And if they feel like expanding their reach or morality, or however you want to put it, in their movies, they'll test the market. We'll see if the market responds. If the market doesn't respond, they'll pull back. And if it does respond, they'll keep making movies. Hallmark is an incredible American capitalist story. I mean, they just started making bad movies and made a brand for themselves.
From greeting cards to bad movies.
Yeah, it just and now they advertise those greeting cards in their bad movies.
What?
So it's genius. They have now it's this whole ecosystem that they've set up where they advertise their own products in their own films. But I was a little bit leery at first, because we went into this Christmas season and they had said, well, we're going to have some LGBT characters, do some more plots. I don't think you make a whole Hallmark movie out of LGBT romance just because that's not your audience.
Right.
You go to Logo, you put that on Logo, right? Like, that's not your audience. But there were LGBT characters in there. We break them down on our podcast, A Very Merry Podcast. We talk about it. But at the end of the day, I think what is most attractive about Hallmark is that it's about love. Like, even we're so used to LGBT that they're going to push some envelope, but they were all just like pretty milquetoast characters the same way that everybody else was, pretty run of the mill. Most of them were white and wealthy or middle class. Everybody in the Hallmark universe has a guest house, whether you're gay or you're straight. So some things are universal in Hallmark. And so I didn't find it offensive at all. I didn't have any problem with it. I thought I might, but it didn't detract from the stories or anything. It was, and it wasn't like in your face, or they weren't rude about it or rebellious about it, or however you want to put it. It was just there were just more people in the universe.
Have you come across a gay or LGBT character better than the Modern Family, Jesse Ferguson and Eric Stone Street?
Yeah,
those two together are hysterical, especially Eric Stone Street.
Yeah. Oh, on Schitt's Creek. Dan Levy and his boyfriend. Yeah, Patrick.
Agreed.
and
Dan Levy.
David.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
David. Yeah, for sure. That's the most iconic gay couple. I'm so sorry, everybody, but I do not watch Modern Family and never have.
I did the first few seasons and it was hysterical, and then I just kind of lost interest. But
yeah, I'm familiar with the show, but it's never one that really got me excited.
But you're right, Schitt's Creek. And the Christian version is Schuet's Creek.
Yeah. Spelled SCHOOTS,
Yeah.
just so we're all on the same page.
The mom character, I don't remember her name officially, but she is the absolute best.
Yep.
I think she's the star.
All that show is absolute perfection. I had a friend who told me, Kira, have you seen this? I'm like, the name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the name is like, oh, it's too much for me. And he was like, if you don't watch the show, I will never be your friend.
Whoa.
Like, our friendship is over. So you go home and you watch the show. And I mean, I'm 10 minutes into episode 1 and going, why haven't I been watching this show?
I think I've told you that several times.
With that show in particular, or just with any
just
show?
a few things. Like
You've
you need to
pitched so
see
many television
this
shows to me.
YouTube clip, or
Yeah.
you need to watch What We Do in the Shadows or whatever.
Yeah, and you're batting
What
like
We Do in the Shadows is a good one.
yeah.
See.
Yeah, you're batting about 15%. So, which is not. I mean, we'll still keep you on the team, but we're only going to use you during the playoffs when we need a warm
as
body.
a pinch hitter.
Yeah, that's basically it. So I'm very curious, since you do have a love of Hallmark movies, but also as an independent filmmaker, and this is one of the things I don't think enough people know about you, and that is what you've done with your movie Minty. That it's a short film which is absolutely brilliant. It's the story of it is Harriet Tubman, correct? Yes, because I always get confused because the name is Minty, but that was her nickname.
Yes.
And
That
she's
was her
running.
name,
She's running the Underground Railroad in the way that Quentin Tarantino would have somebody run the Underground Railroad.
Oh, awesome.
So what inspired that, and in the style that you've done, and are you working with anybody to get that produced?
Like there's a Jew bear.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, well, it's a reimagining of Harriet Tubman as an action hero, and kind of filmed in a blaxploitation style. But what happened was I got a grant for independent filmmakers. I've always been a writer, but I wanted to get into. I have a production company. It's just a fledgling thing. I've always wanted to get into script writing, and so I found this program that would give independent artists like me a chance to learn the business. And so if you get into this program, they provide you with a working mentor, like a Hollywood script writer. So I had a mentor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And Warren Lewis was mine, and he wrote The 13th Warrior and a bunch of other stuff. And you have a mentor to direct. But they wanted to keep the subject focused on empowerment. So they were like, pick a subject that's empowering, and it should be fiction. Well, I picked Harriet Tubman because everybody knows Harriet Tubman. Everybody loves Harriet Tubman. But I feel like she's a really great way in to kind of stealthily discuss issues of women's empowerment. One of the things that's very important to me is like a woman being able to defend herself. And so she loved her guns. One of the things that's important to me is faith. Well, her faith carried her through some of the most terrifying times we could think of. Mm-hmm. One of the things that was important to her was her country. Like not the country she was living in, but the country she wanted to live in. And so she literally fought for it. But there are other parts of Harriet Tubman we never talk about. We never talk about the fact that she was a spy. She helped win the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
This is true.
She led raids into enemy territory.
I learned that on Drunk History.
Drunk History's the best.
Yeah.
And there's
I
another
knew we would
story
be
on Drunk
friends.
History that I want to develop, which is the Robert Small story, which is amazing.
Ooh.
Yes, it's an amazing story as well. But so it's called Minty because her Harriet Tubman's real name is Araminta Ross. She later took on Harriet because it's her mom's name, and Tubman was her married name of her first husband. But all her friends called her Minty. And that's what she was always known as. But one of the things that inspired me about her early on was her journey of faith and how much she trusted God. And there were so many times in her journey where there were almost supernatural things that happened where she would be on the verge of being caught, kind of nowhere to hide, standing behind a bush that didn't offer much cover while hunters are walking right past her. And she's just going, okay, Lord, I need you to cover me. I need you to make me invisible. And how, she recounts how there was one point where a slave master was looking right at her. He was looking right at her in her eyes as she stood in the bushes. And yet somehow she believed that God had cloaked her, that he could not see her. She has just so many amazing stories like that. So I wrote it originally with the idea of making it like, what if all these amazingly spiritual and psychological aspects of Harriet Tubman's character were physical? What if we gave her the Hollywood treatment? And I wrote it as a TV series. And then I got the grant for this. So I did that. But we're still, my creative partners and I are still pitching it as a TV series. I mean, these days with COVID and everything, it's hard to get in a room with anyone. But we're looking, we're still looking for funding. We're still pushing ahead with other projects as well. So we've got another one we're hoping to film this summer, which is a short horror film. I love horror.
Ooh.
And, I think horror is the last place you can talk about good and evil, honestly. I think it's the last place you can talk about God, honestly.
Brian
I love
Godawa
horror
would agree.
films.
Yeah.
What's your top 3 favorite horror films?
Oh, I love The Conjuring. My daughter and I are huge. My daughter's 13, and I've been letting her watch horror since she was about 10. And so we're huge horror films. So I would say like The Conjuring and Annabelle are 2 of my absolute favorites. And then the one that, I mean, I still think about and still have nightmares about is Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Even the TBS version that I saw when I was growing up scared me like nightmare. I was sleepless for days.
Yeah. I wonder if VidAngel would carry it and just take out all the scary and all of the sexual and the bad words.
Yeah, there's just no Freddy Krueger in the whole movie. It's just this empty space.
You can't, but this is also kind of why I like the Conjuring series too, because I can watch it with my daughter. I actually have a friend that is into horror movies, and she's also a Christian, so I'll like call her. I'll be like, oh, can I watch this with Ruby? Like, is it safe? Basically, no sexuality is my rule.
Right.
But I love the Conjuring and Annabelle series because there's no cussing and no sexuality in it at all.
And the Conjuring follows the husband and the wife. I can't remember their names right now, but they were real.
Ed and Lorraine.
Yeah, Bobbit. Bobbit? No, that's
no,
not
no, not the Bobbits. Oh my gosh, no.
Yeah, different.
Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Hold on. Was her name Bobbit?
No.
What was the wife's name in real life? And the one that we're not talking about.
Kira just said it.
Oh, okay. Moving past
Ed
it.
and Lorraine.
Yeah.
There's no Bobbits anywhere. There's no Bobbits anywhere in this story.
You know they named the Bobbit worm after her?
All right.
Oh no. Okay. You know what? Let's move on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome to the show. Hey, he said I derail things.
Hey, when are you guys moving to Texas?
I don't think Texas is on the list. We're stuck here in California for now.
But you write for
sad.
RedState, which is obviously about Texas.
Do you guys? Where are you guys located?
We're just north of the second L in Dallas, about 10 miles.
So my daughter, to escape the oppressive California lockdowns, I took my daughter on a 2-week road trip through Texas back in October. Just me and her. It just got to be really depressing watching her kind of sink. Mm-hmm. And I mean, our schools are still closed. Yep. And so I told my husband, you know what? I know this is crazy, but I'm getting on the road. I don't know where we're going to go. We're going to go somewhere. And he said, you know, so many people in Texas. Why don't you start there? Why don't you go to Texas, drive around, see who will put you up for a night or two? And that's what I did. That's what we did for 2 weeks. We drove 61 hours and 3,800 miles. And we went to El Paso, San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, College Station, Galveston, Austin, and then back home. So we were in the Dallas area for a little bit. I love the Dallas area. I had the best barbecue of my life in some little town outside of Dallas, which I can't remember the name of now. My friend took me to it. It's like an hour outside.
Springtown.
Yeah, probably so.
What was it?
Springtown, maybe.
That's where I think the best barbecue in Dallas is, and it's about an hour outside of Dallas.
Yep.
All right, but it was great.
Not.
But I don't know if Texas is the geography for me.
Oh yeah.
You like the ocean?
I do. I was raised on an island, so I do like to be close to the ocean. But I know there's ocean in Texas, but it's not quite the same.
It's the Gulf. It really doesn't count. Even for Texans, it really doesn't count as the ocean.
No. Did you guys check out the bats in Austin?
We didn't get to, so the bats weren't flying at that time. We were there at like an awkward time, so we didn't get to see.
Amazing.
But we did do the river tour, the obligatory river tour thing. So we got to see them hibernating or like sleeping. But
have you seen that? You know what I'm talking about?
Everything was restricted for COVID. All of the cruises were booked. They were still going, but they were like at half capacity, so I couldn't book anything.
Oh man.
But we had a nice time in Austin. I mean, it's sad to see what it's becoming. Like it looked like mini LA.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, for those listening, you don't know what the bats are. it's 20 million, I believe it's 20 million bats that live under the Congress Bridge, I believe the street.
Yeah.
And when they come out at night, they test the waters. You'll see one out, and then it looked like the Mummy, with the big sandstorm in the face. They just explode out, and it's more bats than you can handle. But they just want to go eat mosquitoes.
That's a pretty cool phenomenon.
Cute little bats too. They're not huge bats.
Yeah, they're Mexican
jumping
something
bats. Mexican jumping bats.
Yeah, that's what they are.
Yeah. So, Kira, it's been an absolute blast having you on. If you decide to come back to Texas, we want you to know that you always have a place to stay, and we will make sure that ahead of time, if you give us notice, we will book you on every cruise that's available, and then we'll just check the list on what you actually want to do.
The Riverwalk in San Antonio.
Yep.
We've done that. We did that. We did the Riverwalk. We did a lot of the touristy stuff. A lot wasn't open, Mostly it was just seeing people, seeing friends. And
well, as of tomorrow, we are completely open and no more mask mandates.
Oh my gosh. Our governor, right before I got on this podcast, you guys, our governor came out and told us that we are never going back to normal. So
sad
I don't
story.
know what to say about that.
Well,
I might have a suggestion.
Yeah, go for it.
Yes.
Maybe you should run against him.
Somebody tell my husband I've been trying to get him to let me run forever, but he will not let me run.
Give us his number. We've got a place for him where he can hunker down in Texas while you run, and he be's apolitical.
I also identify as apolitical, so we can be friends.
Yeah, there you go.
That's what he's worried about. He doesn't even care about like all of the ugliness of politics. He's just like, I don't want to have to sit through any boring political debates.
Yeah, I understand that.
He would get along with most of our listenership, I think.
Yeah.
Because that. Well, we do have a couple of Hallmark movie ideas that we wanted to pitch to you to see if you can help us out with titles for them. All right. So the first idea is, and we need help with a title, and maybe you can help us to kind of massage the idea a little bit. A beautiful, free-loving, freelance journalist woman turned news outlet executive falls in love with a totalitarian gubernatorial incumbent after counseling his precocious young non-binary child back to their biological gender.
Yeah, have you guys been reading my diary?
Hey, come on.
Nice.
What? Hang on. I might have a little crush on our weird governor.
No way.
He's kind of hot. I don't know. I know my friends think I'm crazy, but
his hair is kind of hot.
This is a case of a busy businesswoman, too busy for love, and a sensitive guy who's just looking for
total control.
Who's just looking for complete control in a non-gender specific environment. So it has all the hallmarks. Has a precocious kid, busy businesswoman, too busy for love, and a sensitive guy. In the Hallmark universe, these things cannot take place in a big city like San Francisco. It can't take place in California. It's got to be somewhere snowy.
Okay.
So maybe we move that story to Chicago. That's a pretty totalitarian friendly city, or New York City. I hesitate to say New York City just because in the Hallmark universe there are no totalitarians in New York.
Gotcha.
Like there's no war. And nothing sad. I mean, people die and people divorce, but it never really affects you in the Hallmark universe.
Yeah, like Up would never be able to be made into a Hallmark movie because it's too sad at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Yep.
What do we call that movie? We could call that movie. We could call it Garland and Gender.
Hey.
Like the letters. You have to have your alliteration.
I like it. My wife was asking me as I was listening to a Very Merry podcast. She's like, "Why are you listening to a podcast about Hallmark movies?" I was like, "I'm getting ready to interview Kira Davis. Don't ask me questions." All right, Danley's got our second. Here's
the
pitch.
second pitch. A plucky young comedian and indie movie producer runs for office against an impeached dictatorial former candidate who made his fortune on hair gel futures. Find the contentiousness of the campaign trail as a fertile ground for romance.
Okay, great. So you've got your busy business person.
Yep.
They're both busy business persons, too busy for love.
Yeah.
They're
One of them has to have a precocious child.
Maybe we give that to the plucky young comedian.
So the plucky young comedian. And maybe that child just doesn't have enough of other people's money. Maybe that is the thing that the child is missing. And so the other person comes in and teaches that child how to take other people's money without a lot of effort, which I think could lead to a really great montage.
Yeah. Oh,
scene.
no doubt. Yeah. Every movie needs a good montage scene.
With some upbeat, snappy music.
Yeah.
Where they're doing some shopping.
Okay.
Getting some brunch.
Maybe I would call it Christmas in, I don't know, redo the plot.
It's a young comedian and indie movie producer, and she's running for office
with
against
a slick-haired candidate.
Yeah, against a
Okay,
slick-haired
I got it.
impeached
It's a
candidate.
Christmas campaign.
Oh,
there you go.
There we go. See, we came to the right source.
Campaigning for love.
Campaign.
But it's got to have, if it's Christmas, it's got to have a Christmassy title. Now that could be for the Valentine's slate.
Oh.
Right. But if you're going to do it at Christmas, which is where I focus a lot of my Hallmark coverage, then you've got to have something Christmassy in the name.
Gotcha.
Do most of the Hallmark movies take place around Christmas or Valentine's Day, or so it's just, it could be whenever?
It could be, but they have, they go by seasons, right? Like at Christmas season.
That's when they're going to sell cards, right?
But they do a Valentine's season. They do a New Year's season. We covered some of the New Year's shows this year, and they also have a summer season, and they also have Hallmarks and Mysteries channel, which my partner, Amelia Hamilton, broke down very effectively on our podcast. She tells you everything that happens on the Mysteries and Murders channel for Hallmark. And so that's a whole other, you guys, that's a whole other discussion. You want to go there.
Well, Kira, thank you so much for being on. Our watchers and listeners, don't be fooled by her dimples. She's cute, but she's fierce. Kira, where can our audience find you if they're trying to look at more of the stuff that you're doing or more interested in getting involved in some of your?
Well, thank you for asking. First of all, if you're interested in my film, you can go to YouTube and just search Minty Harriet Tubman movie. It'll pop up. It's very short. It's only about 11 minutes. Or you can go to tubmanmovie.com. You can find it there. Join me on my podcast, Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis. If you're interested in discussing hot topics without the heat, I think that's a great place to start. And if you want to learn more about how we think through our political ideas in a way that can make us more gracious towards one another, I think that's a great place to start. And then join me if you just can't get enough Kira. Join me over on my locals page. That's davisnation.locals.com. Over there, you will find bonus content. I host discussions about different issues. We have a book club we're doing right now. We're reading Public Opinion by Walter Lippmann, written in 1922 and shockingly relevant.
Wow.
To today. Yeah. And we have a good time. We talk over there, and you can see snippets of my personal life over there too. So that is davisnation.locals.com. And find me. Otherwise, just search for me on the internet. Lots of stuff pops up. I am not the Kira Davis Hollywood producer Kira Davis. There's a Kira Davis who produces a lot of Hollywood movies with her creative partner is Hugh Jackman. Sadly, that is not me.
Now he's hot.
I get a lot of messages for her from desperate actors who are like, it's so sad. They go get a message to be like, I really love your work. I just wanted you to know that I think you're so talented. If you have any space in your next film for an actor that's XYZ, please let me know. Here's my information. And I'm always like, you know what? I love your hustle, but I'm the wrong Kira Davis.
You should just save all of those for whenever the Minty movie gets made and be like, hey, all of you people who thought that I was the wrong Kira Davis, this is it. It's finally happening.
Okay. I have one last question before we wrap here.
Here we go.
Because I want to redeem myself from the Ed and Lorraine debacle that happened. The Annabelle doll. Do you think it's really haunted?
Yeah.
Ooh.
I totally believe in like cursed items or curses or, oh yeah. Listen, you know what? Black folks don't mess around with this kind of stuff. This is my daughter and I always make fun of this because we're like, we watch Scary Things to Tell in the Dark the other night, and I'm like, there's no this is why you can't really make a horror movie with black people, because we'll always be like, no,
You just turn the light on and they're gone.
Here. No, oh my God, that house is haunted and dark, and there's plants growing out of the floor, and there's no electricity. Bye, see ya.
Yeah, I would walk right in there.
Dolls. I have had scary looking dolls in my house where it's been like that doll is leaving. It's not staying here. It cannot. Absolutely, I would chuck Annabelle to the curb.
And then she'd show back up.
She would, but you know what? I got Jesus, and I would be like, in Jesus' name, in Jesus' name. I would just be, anointing her, and there's no way I'm gonna let a haunted doll defeat me.
Well, amen. Well, Kira, you are awesome. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Kira freaking Davis. Okay, first off, before we get into your moments of shame, let's just say that this has to be one of my favorite interviews we've ever done. Kira Davis is somebody that I have wanted to interview since the very first time I heard her, which was on the Babylon Bee podcast several months ago. We've actually got their CEO, Seth Dillon, coming on in a few weeks, which I'm really excited about to get to talk to him about everything that he's involved with. But Kira was not only incredibly down to earth, very friendly, very genuine, but she is as insightful on the spot when answering dumb questions about Hallmark movies as she is with some of the incredibly well thought out opinions and controversies that she tackles on Just Listen to Yourself, and that we talked with her about on our show.
She was so much fun.
Yeah,
we had this conversation after the interview,
right?
That you wrapped it up, and I looked at you and subconsciously was like, "What are you doing, man?" Like, we're in the middle of a conversation, and then I checked the time. Went, oh yeah, that is it. That's time.
Yeah, it
was just a lot of fun. Just the whole time, I loved talking with her. So cool.
Yep.
I do not appreciate that she finds Gavin Newsom handsome.
Okay. What are you gonna do about that?
I can't really deny it either, though.
Yeah.
He's handsome, and that's probably the end of his good qualities, in my opinion.
All right. I'm just gonna let you make this admission of Gavin Newsom is handsome all on your own.
Yeah, and I do think that in a boxing match between Governor Greg Abbott, and Gavin Newsom, that Greg Abbott would win.
You think Greg Abbott takes it?
Yeah.
Well,
especially if we can fight dirty. Street rules.
So let's talk about this bear trap that you've stepped in.
Oh my gosh.
With Kira. Explain to us the thinking behind your statements.
Well, there wasn't a thinking. There was a I've seen these movies. I've read about Elaine. I can't remember her name. Lorraine and Ed. I don't remember the last name.
Bobbitt.
No, it's not Bobbitt. It's something different. Sounds the same or sounds similar, but Bobbitt pops into my head, and I go, "Oh yeah, the Bobbitts." No, there was another very famous Bobbitt.
Yeah,
and there is a sea creature named after
the
Bobbitt worm.
Yep, we should.
I even sent you.
We should go ahead and just
toss it up.
Tell people right now, don't Google it. If you haven't.
What, the sea creature? The Bobbitt worm?
Any of it. Oh.
There's a famous criminal case from the 90s.
Yes. Yeah, they just
a horrific criminal case, which they're going to go Google it.
Yeah, so...
If they don't know what it is, they're going to Google it.
Yep, and this is why... It's one of those that there was this weird thing about, like, any man that cheats, now it's the Bobbitt. So... yeah, that was a beautiful derailment. It was one that I was not expecting, and
by the way, it's
my favorite
Ed and
part
Lorraine
about it,
Warren.
My favorite part about I know you weren't even close. She says it like 2 times, and you're still like, yeah, but there's the worm. And my favorite part about it was that Kira, the guest,
but it was Lorena Bobbitt,
right?
So
as I could not get you to move on, as is happening now. Our guest actually went, let's move on.
You know what? Let's move on.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Oh, my goodness.
Welcome to the...
So, thank you, Kira, for being patient and listening. I'm
a big fan of The Ticket, which is the DFW sports radio station. What is the matter with you? You love the ticket.
I just am distant.
And
You know
they-
what? I
and they-
haven't
they
listened to it in
have-
over a year.
Yeah, but how many years combined or even singularly have you listened to them?
Too many.
So how many bear traps of the week have you listened to?
Our emergency breaks of the week. That qualifies.
Emergency breaks, but bear traps. You know,
Yep.
they use the term bear traps. I just thought of that immediately. I was like, I'm in a bear trap. Let's just go. Let's roll with it.
You just bite your leg
Ed
off.
and
like a gummy
Lorraine
bear.
Bobbitt.
You know what? Let's move on.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Welcome to the
Kira had some
Annabelle.
really insightful things to say about, in particular,
get back on track after
the
this.
way
Go
that
ahead.
we handle conversations about our politicians, our political parties, and the people that we put on pedestals. And that these are people that would never come to our house for dinner. They're oftentimes people we don't have relationships with, or that we would
Definitely
never
not
even
Gavin
have an
Newsom.
opportunity to have an interaction with. And yet we feel like over the dinner table or to our friends and neighbors that we have to defend this person at the expense of this actual relationship that I have with you, at the expense of potentially our friendship by allowing myself to be angry and defensive and saying something that's out of line. I'm going to defend a person that would, in a given day, have nothing to do with me, that I don't know, and whose positions and motivation I'm assuming because I agree with them on something that you and I disagree with.
Does it make sense for someone to have this much disdain for a governor of another state that they don't live in?
No, and I think that that's what Kira was talking about, is that the way that you're acting is irrational.
Well, I would say comedic.
And comedic.
Because
you would have to be funny
really
in order for
care.
it to be comedic.
Well, the intent could still be comedic.
Yeah, for sure.
But I don't really care.
You need to
about
workshop
him.
this with Moody.
I actually do. Okay.
Yeah, just okay.
Yeah.
Moody is awesome.
Moody is awesome.
But we're not talking about him. So Kira had a lot of, I think, really insightful things to say about that in particular. Do I think what you're saying is out of line or ridiculous? No. Because I think that it's affecting...
You know that I don't care.
Well, yeah, on the one hand,
actually
yes,
care.
that you're doing it comedically. But on the other, that there's a lot of watching from the other states, right?
Mm-hmm.
People are seeing what Texas has done, what Mississippi's done, what Florida's done, what South Dakota has done, but they're also watching what Chicago and Illinois as an entirety.
Chicago, the state of Chicago.
Yeah, the state of Chicago. They're watching what's happening in the city of Chicago. They're watching what's happening in the state of Illinois. They're seeing what's going on in Washington, in California, in Michigan, and in New York. And there's all these comparisons being drawn because they are on polar opposite ends of the spectrum from one another in the way that they're handling and dealing with this, of who's right, who's wrong, what should we be doing and what shouldn't we be doing. And Kira is very plainly stating what we should be doing is giving one another grace enough to have a conversation and not assume that you're right and I'm wrong.
I completely agree, by the way.
Based on poor motivation. Yeah.
I really enjoyed speaking with her. She's very funny. She's very insightful. She's very balanced.
Yep.
She's the kind of person that, we talked about. She did an episode in her neighborhood.
Yeah, with her neighbor Jason.
Yeah, that she did a live stream. I want to go hang out with her and do a live stream in their backyard.
I think that would be a
with her
blast.
neighbors.
I think Jason in particular would be fun. If you haven't listened to that episode, go check it out on Just Listen to Yourself. Jason has some amazing conspiracy theories and reminded me of a person that we once nearly had on our show.
And we will again.
Maybe we'll have Alice back, but he was
as long as he has his Nacho Libre
much.
mask.
He can wear his Nacho Libre
that
mask,
I gave him,
but no more adult beverages before he comes onto the show. That's the largest swath of information we ever cut out was whenever we had Jason's friend Alice on the show. But go check out Kira's stuff. She's, like we've said, she's very insightful. I feel like we're going to get to a point where we're going to start gushing. Check out Minty, which is her movie about Harriet Tubman. And if you are in the production field and you want to do something that's different, you've got to check out this short film. If you're a film student or you're somebody who appreciates good art that has a different spin on it, go check it out. Description or links to all that stuff is in the description, as well as Kira's podcast. Make sure that you go to her locals page and check her out. If you like what she had to say here on the show, you will love what she's got to say on her locals page, where she's actually allowed a little bit deeper dive into some of those things. And make sure that you check out RedState, like and subscribe to her YouTube channel and what she's doing on podcasts, wherever you get those. Like and subscribe to our channel as well. Thank you guys for watching, for listening. And we'll see y'all next
soon.
week.
We'll see you soon.
Probably in these clothes.
I'm Kira Davis, and this is why you should never listen to the Reverend and the Reprobate. They watch Hallmark movies.